Good evening, Des Moines. Welcome to the Doc and Lefty program here on webcast1live.com. Coming live, as always, from our effervescently cooled and appropriately dry studios in downtown Des Moines. I am Lefty, flying, well, not solo necessarily, but I was gone last week. I was on vacation out of the country, and I had the good grace and aplomb to inform my co-host, the venerable Dr. J. Patrick Bertroche, that I wasn't going to be here at least like the previous show, and I think the documentary evidence supports that. I let him know, and he lined up his folks, and I think that he did a pretty good show while I was gone. And then on Sunday, he informed me that he wasn't going to be here today. So I am by myself. Now, generally, when Lefty has the con, all manner of heck breaks loose. We have musicians on here. We have city planners. We have all kinds of things. But today, we have my good friend, my old friend, Fader Strohmeyer, who is now, I've been informed, gotten super friend of the show status by her third appearance. She has guest hosted with Doc a couple of different times. This is her first time riding with me. We're very pleased to have you. Thank you so much for being on the show, Phaedra.
I'm happy to be here. It's good to see you again, finally.
Hey, it's been a while, but the things that happen when people haven't seen one another in a while are that they text people out of the blue and say, hey, can you come on the show because I don't have anything and we're going to have to go to reruns because Doc's not here and I don't have a guest and I don't have anybody to talk to. And one thing about Dr. Bertroche, if you guys have noticed, is that he can talk to the camera by himself for a solid hour.
And you can't.
I can't.
No, not a bit. I
can't do it. I need someone to talk to because I, unlike my friend, I have a severe inferiority complex where I need my opinions either argued with so I can assert my supreme intellectual mastery of a subject, which very rarely happens, or two, I need someone to validate my opinions because I can't exert my supreme intellectual mastery. Well, anyway, Fader, so thank you for being here.
You're welcome. And incidentally, just to step up in Doc's defense, since he's not here to defend himself, I will say that he did mention on last week's show that he may not be here today.
Oh, he did?
Oh, yes, he did.
I wish that he hadn't. I wish that he had, and I guess if I had watched it, I would have known.
Yes, and he specified that you would be here. If he wasn't here, you would be here with some sort of raging conservative or something similar, or possibly somebody like super friend of the show, Brad Zahn, or
and I'll tell you
Tom
why,
Shaw, I think was mentioned. So I'm sorry that you got me instead.
Oh, no, that's okay, because if we're going to have, the next time we have Brad on, I want Doc here because we have to break down the convention. If you followed that at all, and we'll just get into it a little bit before we get into the rest of the show. Our good friend, Senator Brad Zahn, was defeated at the Republican convention by David Young, who got the nomination to run for the Republican ticket against Stacey Apple for the 3rd district election here in November. Now, Pat had come out and publicly endorsed Brad. I don't endorse candidates on the show.
Just as well?
It's everyone knows how I vote. I don't make a secret of that. But as far as endorsement, I just something about publicly endorsing somebody on a show especially where we might be soliciting and advertising money from them. I don't know. I don't like it. But that's not to cast shade on my co-host because he can do and endorse whoever he wants. His name's on the thing. Anyway, so we'll want to break that down with him because I'm sure that even though Brad is thrilled to have a decent candidate, he would have been more thrilled to be chosen himself. But do you follow the schism in the Republican Party? We're going to talk about this a little bit later in the show about some of I would say non-participation in foreign policy that the Republican Party has exhibited over the past few weeks.
Sure.
Actually, the past few years. But do you follow any of the local goings on with the Republicans or the Democrats in Des Moines?
I have to say no. I'm actually shamefully underinformed about local politics, and I will admit freely that I'm shamefully underinformed. So I wouldn't
want to throw you under the bus at all.
That's fine. I've been there before.
Fair enough. The thing is, like, see, I ride the big man's coattails when it comes to local politics because he knows all these people. Anyway, So we'll talk about that probably in the weeks to come. And I think that I might want to do a big First Amendment show in the next couple weeks too, because the first time we're going to talk to, and we're going to get to it right after the break, is the Supreme Court decision, Burwell v. Hobby Lobby et al., that came down, I think, Thursday or Friday. Well, or no, was it yesterday?
They announced it Monday.
Yeah, they announced it yesterday, and I think that the judges must have finished up the writing of it on Thursday or Friday of last week. We're going to talk about that. We're going to go to our first break. So thank you to our sponsors. Before you go anywhere, check us out on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, everything else social media wise that we might be on or might not be on, because in case we're not on it, we're going to get on it. So check those things out, and we'll see you in a minute or two. Thanks.
Petrosh and Associates, how can I help you?
Petrosh and Associates will provide you with a friendly, caring, and confidential place to find help for mental health concerns. We are ready for your call. Our doctor, Dr. J. Patrick Petrosh, provides a full range of psychiatric services for children, adolescents, and adults in a forthright and informative manner while maintaining a casual, comfortable, and relaxed atmosphere.
Hey, what's wrong?
Logan wants Let's Rock Elmo for his birthday, but since Steve lost his job, I don't think we can afford it. What did you do for money last year when you and John were struggling to make ends meet?
My secret? I went to Me and Mommy to Be. We sold all of Megan and Ryan's clothes and toys there. They give back the highest percentage on their items in the area, and it was so easy.
Megan's clothes? She's 15.
Yes, they can sign newborn through trendy teens. We're not struggling now, but I'm gonna keep saving and making money at Me and Mommy to Be.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
Welcome back, everybody. Before the break, we were sort of touched on the big topic that is taking up all of the oxygen on the news. That is not local politics. I promise that we will talk some local politics in the next couple of weeks, because we need to, and kind of get the lay of the land for the Senate and congressional races that are going to be kind of interesting. I think the Senate race is going to be very interesting. We've got Joni Ernst, who is being touted as one of the first viable, I hate saying female. It sounds like I'm talking about a lady badger or like some other, you know what I'm saying? Like,
I'm not sure that comparison is entirely inaccurate when you talk about Joni Ernst, but okay.
I don't know about that. It just doesn't, don't you hate that when you're talking about, when you hear people talking about she's a female candidate? I feel like
the implication being that there's something special about her being female as opposed to simply being another candidate.
Right.
That she's noteworthy for being female,
you know,
as opposed to any of the other things she might be noteworthy for.
That's right. Bill Clinton being the 42nd male candidate for president. You know what I'm saying?
That would be weird, and no one would say that ever.
No one would say it because it makes it sound like a biology class. And so, but my attempts, it is noteworthy when you're talking about women who are running for office, especially in Iowa, that has never elected a woman to Washington ever, to make that distinction. Although at this point, if you don't know that Stacey Apple and Joni Ernst are women, well, then you've got, I guess you're a better feminist than I am, that you don't even see gender anymore. But it's still, it just, my attempts to kind of get away from that sound even worse, because I'll say things like the lady candidate or the woman candidate, or the, you know, hey girlfriend. It all sounds terrible, and so I apologize. I'll try not to do that. But anyway, so we have Joni Ernst, who's being touted as one of the first viable women to run for the Senate, running for Harkin's seat. We have Stacey Apple, who I think is going to give David Young a run for his money for the 3rd District, although we saw when Boswell got beaten by Latham, 2 establishment guys, that the 3rd District is a little bit more right-wing than it was before it got redrawn. But we'll get into that when Doc is back, because I know he's got a lot of thoughts, and I know that he's going to have a lot of opinions about David Young versus Brad Zahn. He is never afraid to shake things up. So the Supreme Court ruling that came out yesterday, if you haven't followed this at all, Burwell v. Hobby Lobby and another company, Conestoga Woodworks,
Conestoga Wood Specialties.
Wood Specialties. I'm sure that if you've been watching the news, if you've been following any of this on Really Good SCOTUS blog that had a really good breakdown of the opinion, they're great over there to make some of these things. Some of this stuff can get pretty down in the weeds, and they simplify it, or at least pick out the important details. A lot of these Supreme Court justices like talk, about things from the 1700s and makes it more, a little bit irrelevant. So check that out if you want a better understanding. But the breakdown, and correct me if I'm wrong, I know that you've been following the decision.
I have.
And I know, and I know that you have familiarized yourself with the contents. And some of the objections and some of the supportive opinions of it. In a nutshell, the argument was that these closely held for-profit corporations, Conestoga Wood Specialties and Hobby Lobby and Mardell, which is, I think, kind of a...
I have seen much less about them in the...
Hobby Lobby and Mardell?
About Mardell.
Yeah.
It's been Hobby Lobby and the Conestoga Wood.
Right. Mardell, I believe, and I think the opinion talks about this, is not a subsidiary. I think it's a separate corporation, but it's run by the son of the Hobby Lobby folks, the Greens, and they're kind of together. And they have they run their companies in a similar way, presumably, and they have similar objections, and so they're all lumped together. These three companies filed lawsuits and preliminary injunctions against portions of the ACA that were implemented with regulations by the HHS, saying you have to provide health insurance for your employees because they have more than 50 employees. They're big companies. Have to provide health insurance for employees that include this minimum level of care. Part of that minimum level of care is contraceptive care that they objected to. And the opinion makes a big fuss about this, specifically 4 types of contraceptive options that, and I had never seen this word before, but it sounds really offensive to me in a certain way. These companies consider them abortifacients.
Yes.
Ugh. I don't know. Have you come across that word before?
Yes.
I mean, you're a woman.
Thank you for noticing.
You're welcome. You're a woman, and so therefore your opinion on abortion is the only opinion that anybody doesn't care about. If you're a white guy in power, not unlike myself, my opinion on abortion is much more relevant. But
thank you for not caring about my opinion at all.
No, it's not just me.
Are you running for Supreme Court?
The Supreme Court doesn't care either. But and we're joking around, but that's kind of accurate.
It is actually. That's one of the things that is really offensive about this, especially to women, is that this decision was made 5-4, and all 5 of the 5 are male and Catholic.
That's true. We no longer have. Oh man, I forgot about that. I don't think that we have a confirmed Protestant. Do we have a confirmed Protestant on the court right now? I think we might.
Maybe.
But I don't delve into the religious backgrounds of the Supreme Court justices as much.
That was something that ran across my Facebook feed.
I did not realize that.
Congratulations, 5 Catholic men just made reproductive decisions for you. Women everywhere.
Way to go out on a limb, these 5 justices. The Pope is going to really give you commendations for doing something so brave that every other Catholic man in the country probably believes. But so
at least they're consistent.
But we'll get into that too. So I wanted to pick your brain about some of this stuff. Now,
sure.
The main holding of the decision is that the RFRA, which is shorthand for a law that I'm not going to get. You've got the opinion in front of you. You might be able to read that off.
Do you want me to?
It's like the Religious
Freedom Restoration Act of 1993.
Right. And that law was passed in 1993 in response to a Supreme Court decision that's kind of famous, Employee Division v. Smith, and where a few Native American gentlemen got fired, and then when they applied for unemployment benefits, those unemployment benefits were denied because they tested positive for mescaline. Their point was, hey, look, guys, we use mescaline in our religious practices. You can't, or by not allowing these benefits, you're discriminating against our religious practice. The Supreme Court nixed that argument. They rejected that argument. And then, so 3 years later, under the Clinton administration, which is kind of an interesting coincidence. Hey, conservatives, thank Bill Clinton. I know you love to. But Congress came out and passed this to give a more broad protection for religious liberties. And the point they were trying to make was, hey, look, it doesn't matter. I mean, it matters what you believe, but it also matters what you do. And for folks that believe ingesting mescaline is an important part of their religious practice, that's discriminatory to kind of go against that. And so this opinion expands on that by offering or by arguing that for-profit corporations are entitled to similar protections. Every other case up until then had been individuals or nonprofit corporations. And so I was wondering, I mean, what do you see as some of the implications for not just women but husband, because there are men that are married to women that are going to be affected by this too.
And how?
Right. And what do you see as some of the broader implications that this ruling has?
Well, for one, and this is something that's been argued back and forth about whether this will be an issue or not, but can you then, if you are the owner of a closely held corporation and you have deeply held religious beliefs against vaccinations, can you refuse to pay for vaccinations for your employees or their dependents on your own religious grounds? It may not be against their religious grounds, but it's against yours. How is that any different than what's happening here? How is, what was the other example that was thrown out? There was something about a store owned by, I think, Orthodox Jews that wanted to, and this was an actual case that actually got brought up, wanted to be closed on Saturday and open on Sunday. And that was against, I believe, Pennsylvania law where they were located.
Yeah, it was the Braunfeld case, and that was cited ad nauseum in at least the first half of the decision.
Yes. Why is that different? How, maybe you have a better understanding of the legal issues of why that's different, why that's not a thing that's going to happen, but this only somehow covers contraceptive issues. Well, I think that there are going to be wide scale ripples from this, for lack of a better term, that we probably can't even really foresee. I mean, I'm throwing out these examples that you've probably heard if you've been following this story at all. But there are going to be things that come up that are against somebody's very sincerely held religious beliefs, and they happen to be the owner of a closely held corporation. Right. And because 90% of corporations in the United States are closely held.
That is not something I knew.
Yes.
Interesting.
Now,
10% are publicly traded?
Apparently, yes. Huh. Now, not all of them would necessarily fit the exact definition that's specified in here. It's not closely held as a much broader term than that, but and you would have to prove, for example, that this was a religious belief that you sincerely held. I think also you'd have to, I think it's specified in here in the opinion that the owners of the organization has to be less than 5, but they all have to be related. They all have to be family members, and so it has to somehow be or closely related in some fashion. It can't just, you and I can't own a corporation and claim that we have the same shared religious belief and decide not to pay for,
or at least the burden of proof would, or at least the burden of proof would be a little bit more. Proving it would be more difficult. It's easy. It's a lot easier to prove that you believe the same things as your family, although I certainly don't anymore. I don't know about you.
Nope.
So there you go. Sometimes kids grow up and they don't believe what their parents believe. The thing is, and I agree. First of all, I completely agree with sort of the broader impact that may happen. And by the way, folks, if you want to call in to voice your opinion, call and yell at me or support what Fader has to say, call 855-244-0077 and just we're happy to take your call and talk to you about this, because I know that this is something that's been on Americans' minds the last 2 days. But one of the, you were talking about, I heard blood transfusions.
That was it.
The blue, the Sunday blue laws that used to happen, they don't happen so much anymore because lo and behold, Christians realized they could make money on Sundays. Right.
Products made from animals was another one that I heard. Actually, there's a lot of, for instance, diabetic requirements. I don't know what all. Insulin, I think, is one that was thrown out. Anything made from gelatin, all of which are animal products. If your religion forbids you from handling the products of an animal or harming an animal to better your own life, then that's a whole realm of things you're just all of a sudden okay to not pay for, and that's...
And what I love about the Supreme Court, and they do it all the time, they do it even when the liberals like the opinion or when the conservatives like the opinion. It doesn't really matter. They will say things, and I think they say it in one part of the holding, This just does not cover blood transfusions, and it doesn't, in this opinion, does not cover all these other things. And
well, yeah, it doesn't, but
right, but it opens the door. And the thing is, and we'll get to this after this, the break that's coming up here in a second, because I have another question I want to ask you. But one of the things about this opinion, I read the first half of the main opinion. I kind of agree with the law, but we'll talk about that here in a couple of minutes, because that's a whole nother kettle of fish. So do you think, now some of the pushback I've seen from a lot of conservatives has been, hey, liberals, folks, get over it, right? And that seems to be their response to a lot of things, parroting some of the liberal, although liberals haven't won a major Supreme Court battle in a while. I can't think of the last one that was really super good off the top of my head. I'm sure there's a few recent. Well, the ACA, I guess, would be the big one, but that was, I think that Judge Roberts understood some of the things that were going to happen, and he's following up on helping the conservatives try and gut the law. But I
suppose liberals could probably claim DOMA.
Oh yeah, sure. Those are the two big ones, and those are two. But neither one of them went far enough, in my opinion. But they're saying, just get over it. It's not that big of a deal. There are still 16 drugs out there that are covered under this. It's just the 4, the 2, like the morning after pill, to use that term, and the 2 IUDs. So Phaedra, what is the problem? Isn't 16 is pretty good. 16 out of 20. That's 20. That's 80% of the drugs. Isn't 80% better than nothing?
Well,
isn't that what they would say, right?
I really hope no one would ever use that kind of logic to try and make a claim that you still have 16 possible options for birth control.
Right.
Well, yeah, I suppose kind of you do. You also have abstinence, if you really want to consider that a contraceptive method. I wouldn't necessarily, although it is effective.
It's 100% effective.
It is. That's so I hear.
Unless you're the Virgin Mary. And she hasn't been around. Those haven't been around in a while. So
right. There would be over-the-counter options, condoms, that sort of thing, that would be available that wouldn't necessarily be a drug that needs to be covered. But there are a host of reasons that women use contraceptives. The one that nobody wants to talk about is because women have sex. There are reasons.
Right.
There are reasons to do this. And for a number of women, myself included, the 16 other drugs that are out there don't work right. Most of them are based on hormones. They'll somehow do that, which means that they're kind of messing with your system. In my particular case, just to open up my whole medical record here.
Hey, go for it.
The birth control pill, the standard not over the counter, normal everyday birth control pill that you get makes me crazy. Absolutely certifiably crazy. So that's probably 15 out of the 16?
Okay.
That are now not an option.
I haven't taken birth control in a while.
I wouldn't recommend that you do. Right. I understand it causes weird effects for male candidates.
Right. Yeah, male candidates for president. It would be a problem for the male candidates of the show. That's true. But go on.
So I can't be the only one. That would be weird. So to me, it doesn't make any sense to say, well, these things, all of which kind of do the same thing, this certain group of items are not covered, and we're not going to pay for those, but we will pay for this other certain group of items that are pretty much the same. I also understand from some of my friends who have IUDs and can explain to me how they work, that the argument that they are abortifacients is not entirely accurate. Yes, many of them do work that way, but most of them work by preventing fertilization in the first place. Not to mention the fact that the implantation of a fertilized egg often fails to happen anyway without the help of any kind of contraception.
Right.
So are those natural abortions also somehow a problem for Christians, or is it just the ones that we're medically causing? There are also any number of herbal remedies and things like that. I have a friend who's an aromatherapist, which take that for what you will, but tells me that there are certain aromatherapy fragrances that you can't use on pregnant women because it will or can cause them to spontaneously abort. I've been told honey is an abortifacient, actually. I know, right?
That
honey
is insane to me.
Yeah, you're apparently not supposed to eat honey when you're pregnant, and you're not supposed to have it when you're if you're not supposed to give it to a child under like 2.
You can drink a glass of red wine, but you can't eat honey.
Yeah,
that's amazing.
I know. And this is all, incidentally, things that I have been told by other people and totally have not looked up to actually verify whether they're true.
That's okay. We're not a news
these
program.
Are the things.
We bring you the views you love from the perspectives you hate. But anyway, we're going to keep talking a little bit more about this after the break here. You're listening to Doc and Lefty on webcast1live.com. We're with my old college buddy.
Would you stop calling me old?
My college buddy who happens to be not quite as old as me, Feder Strohmeyer from right here in the Des Moines area, is guest hosting for the absent but duly missed Doc Bertroche. So we'll be back in a couple of minutes. Thank you for tuning in, and we will see you soon.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
Get away from us, you mean old credit card. We don't have any more money. We're in trouble now. Save us! Help! Somebody save us! Somebody help! Help! Save us!
Hi, I'm Tom Coates from Consumer Credit of Des Moines. If your credit card's a little too animated, give us a call.
Hooray! We're saved! Consumer Credit! You're our hero!
If Tom Coates from Consumer Credit of America was your personal webmaster, Tom would filter out all bad debt emails. If Tom was your mailman, you'd never get any debt reduction junk mail. If Tom Coates was a lineman, he'd block any phone calls offering to reduce your credit card debt.
Hi, I'm Tom Coates with Consumer Credit of America, and we're still your best choice for credit counseling. We're local, we're accountable, and we can do more. You make the call when the time's right for you.
When it comes to competition, there really is none for Consumer Credit of America.
Hey, welcome back, everybody. Thanks for sticking around. We certainly do want to thank all of webcast1live.com's sponsors. We want to thank this show's sponsor, Bertroche & Associates, is Doc's outfit, my outfit. Lubinas Law Firm sponsors the show. We've got Des Moines anesthesiologists in Des Moines and Fort Dodge. They do a great job, and they certainly do help us out. And to tell you the truth, the full list of our sponsors is something that that I forgot. So if there's anybody out there, Halo Capital is a great friend of the show and helps us out too. Facebook, Twitter, the rest of it. So back to the Burwell v. Hobby Lobby decision. We're talking about some of the impacts and so, just sort of like the practical significance of a decision like this. And here's the thing. I read the syllabus, so I know the central holding, and I know kind of and I understand some of the underlying law of it. And I read the first half where they set up why the RFRA is applicable here. Now, the RFRA itself is a law designed, or that basically says the government shall not substantially prohibit or substantially impact or cause an impact on a negative impact on the free exercise of religion unless it has had compelling government interest to do so, and the means with which it affects religion is the least restrictive possible. For example, one of the things they cite in the decision is that just because you are you can't necessarily have a religious objection to paying taxes. I mean, you can, and that religious objection is duly noted, but you can't have that objection and just refuse to pay taxes because the way the taxes are paid in this country is the least restrictive way of collecting or having to pay taxes. There's no other option. And the decision here says that not only is the RFRA applicable to for-profit closely held corporations, but that the mandate requiring these companies to provide these contraceptive services with no and the language is escaping me, but basically with no employee contribution. So you're getting them for free as part of your healthcare plan. They said that plan in and of itself is is too restrictive. There's less restrictive option, and they cite two exemptions. religious employers like churches, religious organizations are exempt from the mandate, and religious-oriented nonprofit corporations are exempt from the mandate. So I guess your religious-run hospitals or your religious nonprofit, like missionary companies,
social services groups,
right, exactly, that do these sorts of things, they're already exempt, and so the accommodation that the HHS has made for those companies is that they use third-party administrators, other insurance companies that come in, or make available the ACA, federally run exchanges, to get these benefits provided. I kind of agree that that's a less restrictive means of enforcing these provisions of the ACA, and I kind of think that means that the decision is legally sound. What do you think that those are viable options? Viable?
There are certainly options. They're options. Right. I will concede that they are options. I am fortunate to not actually work for a closely held corporation. I work for a publicly traded company, so none of this actually directly affects me. I can get, fortunately, whatever kind of contraception I want to have. So that's kind of nice. However, there are people who are not that lucky, and there are people who would not be able to afford contraception that they have discussed with their physician and determined is the best option for them based on their own medical history and needs. There are people who wouldn't be able to do that without their employer's assistance. And to have all of this just sort of thrown on the government instead doesn't necessarily seem like a great choice to me.
Well, and that's...
However...
Go ahead.
I'm more in favor of everyone having access to contraception that wants it than I am restricting the government in that fashion. Right. And as a libertarian, I'm about restricting the government. I kind of like that. But contraception is, in my view, a public good. There are a lot of things that happen when women are empowered to control whether or not they are going to have a child if they choose to have sex. Right. And there are things that men can do too. I understand. However, it does
covered by that are covered by insurance plans.
I know, right?
Well, yeah.
So there are things that you can do, and if that's something that you want, you should be able to get that. I'm not a big fan of the ACA in the first place. I don't think it's necessarily the government's purview to tell private businesses what they must or must not pay for. But now that they've done that, now that we've said, okay, yes, we're going to do this, we either need to do it or not.
Right.
Let's not screw around here.
Well, and I agree with all of that. When I say that I kind of agree with the law, now here's what's frustrating for me when I read this decision. Other than the fact that if it's really well written is kind of a, I mean, it's not beautiful, angry prose the way Scalia writes, and it certainly isn't as scholarly sounding when you read it as something that the Chief Justice would write. But Samuel Alito,
it is very readable, actually. Yes, I'm rather impressed by that.
Anybody should, I mean, if you're interested in this at all and you like to read things, this is something that you don't have to. A lot of people feel intimidated that this is something for law professors or for constitutional lawyers to read, and it's certainly not at all. And that's something that I would recommend if anybody's interested to go ahead on the Supreme Court website, download it and read it. It's long, but it's worth it because it affects you and it affects how you're oriented to corporations and your country. My point about the law of this is that if you're going to say that the RFRA covers corporations, which is what they're saying, and you're going to say that corporate law is designed to, or that corporate law acting under the First Amendment is designed to protect the religious liberty of the owners of that corporation, which is something that they also say, something that is contrary to history, but it is consistent with the way corporate law has developed over the last 150 years. Then you kind of have to agree with the reasoning that if the government can do it, the government should do it. But shouldn't that bug conservatives? Now this is what's interesting to me about this opinion. The opinion says, we're not telling you how to come up with the rules and how to allow these folks to exempt out and who foots the bill for your contract. We're not saying anything about that, except that there already is this government plan in place. And isn't that interesting that the conservatives who are saying, hey, good on the Supreme Court for protecting religious liberty, we certainly do enjoy the fact that, oh, wait, now we all have to pay for contraception because contraceptive care is still in the ACA. It's still something that has to be covered, and it's still something that insurance companies are going to have to deal with. So if the employer isn't going to pay for it, and I'm of the mind that employers shouldn't pay for health insurance anyway, and this is where we're going to disagree, because I do believe that the government should be taking care of healthcare, all healthcare. Healthcare is not just a for-profit industry anymore. It's a public good. But to me, that also suggests that it's turned into a public utility, kind of like the internet. I sort of feel like that the government we wouldn't have this argument of fairness doctrine, for example, if the government was calling the shots more so about the internet, because we have all kinds. We have the interstate system, we have the military, we have all these different these utilities, these public goods that we pay for with our taxes that the government is better at administrating. And I think that because healthcare is not a pure market-oriented system, right? If I'm having a heart attack, I don't care which doctor is cheaper. I'm going to whichever doctor is closest, regardless of the cost.
Right.
It's not a pure market-based decision that maybe the government is, but that's beside the point. Employers shouldn't be involved in this anyway. And so, and obviously, partly is for this very reason. We now have an owner who's empowered to make decisions for his employees, which is another counter-conservative principle, who have railed against the ACA since its inception, saying government is coming between you and your doctor. Government is taking away your health care. You can't get the treatment that you want now because the government's going to tell you what you can and can't have. And by the way, your grandma's going to die on the death panel. All conservative arguments, but it's perfectly okay for your benevolent corporate overlord to make those decisions. This decision, even if the law makes sense to me, the fallout does not, because you now have a situation where, hey, I just happen to work for a company, and maybe it's the only company that provides decent benefits, decent wages in my community, or I just kind of like working there because I'm going to be an art major and I like working for a store that has this kind of stuff. But, oh, sorry, this doctor thinks he knows better than, or this owner thinks he knows better than my doctor, and now the prescription that my doctor wrote is useless because I can't pay for it. That's kind of the fallout here. Is that, I mean, what do you think? Is that something that kind of vaguely makes sense to you? You can ignore all the socialist crap, but that's just kind of my thoughts on it.
Let's see. If I ignore all the socialist crap, what's left?
Well, that's a good question.
I'm not sure where to start with responding to that.
Okay. Well, you know what?
Because you've just said a whole bunch of things, and I'm...
I'll give you a chance to think about it because we have to go to another break. But please come back because we're just going to end up talking about this decision for the whole hour, which is fine with me. I wanted to expose some Republican hypocrisy about the new flare-up in Iraq and whether how they treat President Obama's foreign policy, with a lot of angry rhetoric that belies their lack of having a foreign policy at all. But we're not going to get to that today. And actually, it's more fun to fight about that with Doc because I don't feel like fighting very much with you, if that's all right to say.
Well, that's fine, and I think we'd probably agree more than likely on the foreign policy, and that's not as much fun to watch. So
it's not. No, certainly not. So Fader's going to tell me exactly why I'm wrong with the way that I'm thinking about this decision after the break. Stay tuned for our sponsors. This is Lefty with Doc and Lefty. We'll see you soon.
Bertroche and Associates will provide you with a friendly, caring, and confidential place to find help for mental health concerns. We are ready for your call. We are proud to work with military personnel and their families. Our doctor, Dr. J. Patrick Bertroche, provides a full range of psychiatric services for children, adolescents, and adults in a forthright and informative manner while maintaining a casual, comfortable, and relaxed atmosphere. Our licensed mental health therapists provide individual counseling to children, adolescents, and adults, including couples and marital counseling. Visit our website at bertrocheandassociates.com for more information or call 515-334-9484. Our offices are located at 5525 Meredith Drive in Des Moines, just east of Skate North off Merle Hay Road. Isn't it time to talk to someone? Take care of yourself and your family. Contact Bertroche and Associates.
Hey, welcome back, everybody. Thanks for sticking around. We've got a few minutes left to talk about Burwell v. Hobby Lobby et al. I'm with my guest host, Fader Strohmeyer, who is doing a fantastic job filling in to Doc's seat today, and we certainly do appreciate having you here for the whole hour. I know that, she had to cancel like 19 different things to be here, and it's not just because I asked. It's because she would rather make sure that everybody out there that listened to the show had a good opinion to take to bed with them tonight and chew over than just me bloviating for an hour by myself. So we do applaud you for that. One of the other thoughts that I had, and I knew that I was going to let you respond to my last. I'm not going to let. I do have the mic. I'm not going to let you respond to it because I have another thought that I think that you might find interesting.
That's fine.
One of the things, aside from the fact that it's just creepy to call a corporation a person.
Well, we have two different words for a reason.
Right.
We have this whole word that means corporations, this whole word that means person, and they're not the same word. They're not for a reason.
They're not, and the problem is that the legal fiction of corporations as people has been around for a really long time. The Supreme Court is not going to change that at any. And this might be the push into the culture that starts that ball rolling, because I think that they've come up with a lot of decisions recently, like, you can give all the money you want to folks, and now
if you're a corporation,
right? And this, you can dictate health decisions if you're a corporation. I think that we're going to because corporations can have a religious doctrine, and I
apparently
think you're right. Even though Hobby Lobby as a thing is not going to a church, the owners will go to a church presumably. Mm-hmm. But one of the things they kept talking about in this decision is the sincerely held religious belief of the owners. Mm-hmm. Now, I'm not casting aspersions on the sincerely held religious beliefs of these owners at all. I'm sure they're great people, fun at a barbecue, as long as I don't know, you're not having a beer or something. I'm sure they're lovely, sincere, earnest people.
I am by no means as certain of that as you are. Since I've never met them, they could be horrible individuals.
Well, no, you're right. It's a coin flip. We just don't know.
We don't, and so. But go on, please.
But what we do know is how they run their business, because they are a corporation in public that takes money from feminists, heaven forfend, that is perfectly willing to accept Muslims and Jehovah's Witnesses and all manner of different religious faiths under their roof to spend money on the stuff that they provide.
Their 401k, their company retirement plan apparently actually invests in companies that make the exact same contraception devices that are now being not paid for by them.
And these are all perfectly acceptable corporate practices. Mm-hmm. But are they Christian corporate practices? I don't think so.
Well, how can you know?
Exactly. But another example of this is my brother-in-law, who is a great guy and a committed, faithful Christian person, and a very smart individual, found an article online and posted on his Facebook page. I can't remember the article. I'm not going to look it up now because that is boring to watch. But basically, the article said, don't call Hobby Lobby a Christian corporation because it doesn't engage in Christian practices. Mainly, and the thrust of the article was they buy stuff from China, one of the biggest abusers of human rights and violators of religious freedom principles in the entire world. Mm-hmm. Now, a corporation seeking to maximize its profit and minimize its losses, minimize its expenses, is absolutely understandable absolutely for that corporation to go to China and buy stuff cheaper than it could be made here in the States.
Sure.
Absolutely, perfectly fine. But if they're saying, if their argument is that we don't want to facilitate behavior that we find offensive to our religious sensibilities, and we don't want to be forced to do that by the government, doesn't that give them the lie that they're perfectly willing to facilitate the abuse and religious non-religious enslavement to a non-religious principle in atheism in China, but they're perfectly willing to give all their money to them, but not spend any money on folks here because it would further something they find sinful and offensive. I find that to be, maybe I'm missing something, but I find that to be extremely hypocritical.
So your issue at the heart of it is that Hobby Lobby's view should be that contraception is sinful and they don't want to fund that, but human rights violations taking place in China are totally fine, and they're fine with funding that by proxy, if nothing else, by buying products from China. Am I understanding you correctly? I'm
not saying that that's necessarily, if I've ever had that conscious thought, but I'm saying that the argument by the attenuated nature of their objection to contraception is almost exactly the same as, or it should be the same as, the attenuated nature of, hey, pumping money into an economy that abuses people is just as bad as buying contraception for a few ladies that might need it.
Since I obviously can't speak for what they think.
Oh, of course not. And you're not a representative for them.
Not by a long shot.
But you have a great BS meter, and I think it's BS.
It is. It absolutely is. And I'm trying to find some sort of way that you might be able to justify that, and I really can't. The only thing that comes to my mind as a logical way to make that argument is that the people here, their employees, are actually their employees. They have a direct relationship and a direct impact on that. The people in China who are being subjected to these horrible human rights violations may or may not actually be their employees.
Right.
You know, they might be making the products that Hobby Lobby is buying. They might not be. It might have nothing to do with it. So they're not directly responsible for funding those actions in the way that they would be directly responsible for funding the actions of, say, their female employees by buying them contraceptives.
Except that they might.
I still think it's
right. Well,
as you pointed out, BS.
Except that they're not directly funding anything. They're making this kind of contraception available to be freely bought or not. I mean, not every woman who works for Hobby Lobby is going to go out and get the IUD that they think is so terrible. They might be perfectly fine with those other 16 options that are available. But so I don't want to go around and around on this, because I think that we probably have the same view. But I guess what frustrates me more than anything else about what this decision means is here you have. The Supreme Court decision, one of the lines that I took from it says that if we follow what the HHS argument is and the dissent arguments and don't allow them RFRA protection as contemplated by the statute, you're going to put business owners with sincerely held beliefs in the untenable position to either choose to forego the benefits of the corporate structure and all the goodies that happen when you incorporate, or you're going to prevent them from seeking judicial protection of their sincerely held religious liberties. And that's a point that I sympathize with that point, except that
you don't.
Well, no, the only way that you can make that point is if you say that the purpose of a for-profit corporation, that it's for profit, is
pretty
consistent
obvious
with religious principles, and it clearly isn't. Any study of any religious text says, that profit is secondary to anything that you'd want to do, and that your religious views are like they should be. If profit happens, fine, but right. If you are a person, if you are Hobby Lobby and you are engaged in the business of making money, which they are engaged in doing. That if you're a corporation, that's perfectly fine to do that, because all corporations operate that way.
Right.
But if you are saying that we are going to operate our company on religious principles, and this company is for the benefit of our religious principles and for the propagation thereof, then something that kind of frustrates the profit motive of your corporation, I think that is consistent with your religious principles, i.e., not supporting human rights violations in China, should be a part of your corporate charter. That should be a part of your corporate mission if you're going to have and be believed to have sincerely held religious beliefs such that you're protected under the RFRA. it should. I mean, I don't think it's. I don't go ahead.
I think you might be confusing sincerity with completeness.
Okay. What do you mean by that?
Well, I'm willing to give the owners of Hobby Lobby that they have a sincere, honest belief.
They themselves do.
They do. And as apparently, according to this, because they do, the corporation now also has a sincere, honest belief that abortion is wrong and life begins at conception. Mm-hmm. So any drug that causes conception to not happen properly is wrong, morally wrong, and they're not going to support that.
Mm-hmm.
I believe that they hold that sincerely. Where I think the issue is coming into what you're describing is that sincerely held religious belief does not have to be applied globally for it to be sincere.
Oh, that's a good point. Yeah, that's a good point. And
they have this one belief that is held very sincerely, I'm quite sure. Mm-hmm. But they may have other beliefs that are not held as sincerely. Or they may have other beliefs that maybe provide for instance, buying stuff from China.
Right. Well, and no, that's a good point. I guess I'm looking at it more, and I don't like making this. I look at sincerity of belief more as a lawyer sometimes when I'm talking about the evidence of it, right? So they had to prove that they were sincere to be able to get this protection in district court. And so I would, if I was a cross-exam, if I was like the defense or the prosecutors or whoever it was that was cross-examining the president of Hobby Lobby, mm-hmm. that's maybe a cross-examination strategy that I would use. Well, you buy stuff from China, so you don't have the... You see what I'm saying?
Sure.
But I think that you make a good point, and I'm going beyond the scope of the decision. Another thing that I was talking about with a friend of mine today, we are now getting to a point where the Supreme Court is eroding, in my opinion, is eroding the difference between the natural person and the corporate person, mm-hmm. especially in this decision where they say the natural person's religious belief is ascribed in this situation to the corporate belief such as it is. Mm-hmm. The further we push that, this person, the person is identical to the corporation, doesn't that almost necessarily suggest that the distinction between the corporate entity and the person is breaking down? Therefore, the protections as a separate legal entity that a corporation enjoys, maybe they shouldn't enjoy them anymore.
I would have to ask you that. You're the lawyer, not me. Well, but it does certainly seem like that on the face of it. If corporations can now have a religious belief of any type, and they enjoy all kinds of other legal protections too, then... Mm-hmm. At what point are corporations people? I would lose that argument. Just so you know, my professional opinion would be I would lose that argument in court. Hands down, I would lose it in court. But there's this sense. I have this sense that the more, okay, here for example, if just a quick aside, if you're a sole proprietor or a general partnership that hasn't incorporated anything, mm-hmm. you are liable for everything that the company does. Okay. So if my law firm is a sole proprietor and I go out and I say, hey, I want to get this line of credit, my personal assets are on the hook for that because there is no distinction. The sole proprietor, the company is me, I am the company. Right.
The corporate structure separates those two things, and so you can have the corporation go out and incur all kinds of debt, but you personally
don't.
Right, and you understand. Everybody mm-hmm. understands that.
Sure.
That's basic business law. But that is founded on the assumption that there is an actual difference between the owner or the CEO or whoever it is and the company itself. Mm-hmm. And to me. So, I mean, all kinds of evidence would be that would pierce that corporate veil and ascribe debts to the person would be if they paid, they used the same books, if they had the same phone, if the business was operated out of the house. There are all kinds of things that lawyers can use to break down that separation. Mm-hmm. Why wouldn't religious faith become one of those things down the road? And couldn't that be something that the Supreme Court didn't intend, and we're going to be here in 25 years with some atheist knocking on the door saying, hey, these folks, if you're going to say that you're Christian, you have a Christian company, then I don't know. Anyway, but do you have any final thoughts on this decision before we wrap things up?
Well, I did find a really interesting thought here that was This was actually the chair of the Libertarian Party said that, in a press release today, gave a statement in which he stated, the government doesn't make men get prescriptions for condoms, so there's no reason that it should make women get prescriptions for birth control pills. The point of this argument was that perhaps the answer is completely separate from everything that we've just been talking about, and perhaps the answer is that birth control pills and anything else, any other contraceptive devices, should not be something that you have to go to a doctor for.
Boy, is that... I understand the thought, and I agree with it on principle, except that for correct me if I'm wrong, contraceptions are more serious.
Well,
right? I mean,
I found this quote really interesting because as a woman, I would much rather have the advice of my doctor telling me are these going to interact with any other prescriptions I'm taking? Do I need to know anything about this kind of stuff? Things that may or may not be easily known if I'm just getting something from the pharmacy at Walgreens.
And I don't think, and it's kind of apples and oranges because a condom isn't going to interact with blood pressure medication.
No, not a bit. So, and you can apply. You can apply a condom yourself, relatively easily. You cannot, for instance, install, an IUD. Yourself.
Absolutely,
You 100% cannot do that yourself. So you're going to need, at some point, you're going to need the assistance of somebody else to do that. And just as well that person be medically trained to know what they're looking for. So I'm not sure that this answer is exactly right. But I appreciate the thought of trying to come up with a different solution that isn't just, nope, you don't have to pay for it.
Yeah, fair enough. And I would find it interesting. I mean, if this is all about preventing women from, I don't know, being able, well, we all know what it is. It's control over women, and that's been a theme, not just with religious folks, but a theme with men in power for generations and generations. It's not going to end here. We're not certainly going to fix between the two of us today. But one final thought before we go is, you can get a vasectomy and have it covered by your insurance. That's an effective way to prevent having children. Why can't you then? The parallel there is, hey,
this is the argument that it's easier to unload a gun than to shoot at a bulletproof vest.
No. Well, of course it is, but no, I'm not, and I'm not saying that's like a we're just going to shrug our shoulders and say, this is the out. But if they don't have an objection to that kind of preventative, because it's all about having children, right? The religious faith, like. The religious belief is more children are better, and all instances of sexual interaction should end in children in a live birth, maybe. But they're okay with their plans covering vasectomies, but not contraception. Wouldn't both be better in case one or the other doesn't work? That's the point.
I would agree with you on that 100%.
Okay, well, we were able to wade through without serious bomb. We want to thank our producer, Ryan. I want to thank webcast1live.com for providing the studio. So I want to thank my friend Phaedra for being here today. Certainly, she moved some things around to fill in for Doc Bertroche, who I assume he and I will be back in the seats next week to talk about whatever we're going to talk about. I really want to have a broader discussion about the First Amendment and religion with respect to some of these rulings. Citizens United on the free speech side, this on the religious liberty side, that have come out, and what the Supreme Court, certainly what the Roberts Court is doing in that regard. So hopefully we'll be able to get a couple of my buddies in that are experts in those fields, and if you wanted to be able to be here, we'd certainly love having you, because I think that you have a lot of insights that are well taken. But you're welcome. Certainly want to thank all the webcast1live.com sponsors of this show, Des Moines Anesthesia, Bertroche & Associates, Lubinas Law Firm, Halo Capital. Again, check us out on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and all of the various other things that we so Google us. We're around. Anyway, thanks a lot for listening, folks. We'll be back next week. Enjoy the 4th of July. Happy birthday, America. Belgium sucks. Good night.
Hi, I'm Representative Tom Shaw, and I love these guys. Both of them.
Love these guys. Get over here. Love both of them.